My name is Dr. Grace Telesco.
My name is Dr. Grace Telesco.
My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. I'm joined by Dr. Teresa Lily White,
Dr. Lenore Walker, Mr. Ed Densel.
Investigation with Dr. T is something that actually was the brainchild of our dean, Dr. Durham. And now, coming up this next season, we're going to be doing it almost weekly, a weekly show on a Thursday night. So lots of really cool guests. It's not just police topics, it's not just corrections topics, but it's topics that are affecting us in kind of all areas. But one of the things that we hope to get across is raising awareness, educating about some of these really important topics like human trafficking, topics like disasters. We did a show, Confessions of a Serial Killer. So for this upcoming season, we've got a couple of really cool things. We're going to have a day in the life of a DEA agent. Another really cool one, which is really close to my heart, is going to be on September 11th. Because not only do we want to talk about 9/11 and the work of the NYPD, but I also want to really look at the mental health outcomes. We also have the human trafficking panel. We are going to bring back our Brevard Sheriff, Sheriff Wayne Ivey. It's always a pleasure to have him on. We're going to have Unfound again, Ed Densel. He'll be coming back a few times, and that's going to be really exciting and interesting too.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco, as you heard, and welcome to Investigation with Dr. T. We are so excited about tonight's guest. We have Melinda Blostein, and she is from the Public Defender's Office for Broward County. She serves as the Chief Assistant Public Defender for the Specialty Courts Division, including the Mental Health Division, Drug Court, Veterans Treatment Intervention Court. Ms. Blostein grew up in North Lauderdale and graduated from Coconut Creek High School. She attended Florida State University, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. And then she went on to attend, ready, Sharks? She attended, that's right, Nova Southeastern University, Shepherd Brawl Law Center, and graduated cum laude, earning her JD in 1996. Ms. Blostein began her legal career with the Broward County Public Defender's Office in 96. Previously served as supervisor in both the Juvenile Division and in Mental Health Court, and served as past chair of the Juvenile Detention Center Advisory Board and as a member of the Florida Bar Juvenile Rules Committee. Ms. Blostein is also the recipient, this is very, very prestigious, the NAACP Justice Award in Broward County in 2007. 2023, Broward County's Women Who Tell Our Stories, 2023, NAMIs, which is the National Alliance of Mentally Ill, Champion for Recovery Ally. Ms. Blostein spends her free time volunteering with local charities to assist those individuals dealing with food insecurity. Wow, what an individual, what a person. Please help me welcome Melinda Blostein as our guest tonight. She's going to share her camera and come on, and there she is. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. You want to tell the story of how we met?
You came with a bunch of your students and visit our mental health court here in Broward County.
Yes.
I think we weren't having such an exciting day, but it was great to see you and all the students and kind of get an idea of what we do and how the whole team works, including probation, the clerks, and the state attorney and the public defenders in a treatment court.
Yeah, we saw Judge Porth, who is actually, I think he's going to be our guest at the end of
I think next week.
Is it
next week? I think it is, but I'm not sure.
Next week? Oh my gosh, that is very cool. Yes, it is next week. Awesome. What an amazing guy he is. We could talk about him later, but enough about him. We're going to see him next week. This is all about you. So I want to say thank you again for saying yes. And we're just going to kind of go back and forth a little bit. I have a couple of questions. I guess my first one is, and this helps our audience and our students who are, kind of still some who are unsure. They know they want to be in criminal justice, but they're not really sure what. Some want to be in law, some want to be in law enforcement, some want to be involved in some type of the correctional system. But what was it for you that, you got your bachelor's degree and you had your eyes set on something? Tell us a little bit about that process for you.
So I'd love to say that I had this great plan, right, to go to law school. And I always thought I do interviews now with people. So I'm like, okay, I see people who are like, this is what I always wanted to do. And I had a calling. I didn't have a calling. I was a philosophy major. And realistically, I met with my counselor and they were like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, what can I do with this fantastic degree? And they said, you can teach or you can like go to law school. A lot of people do. And I'm like, okay, so if I go to law school, I can kind of defer responsibility for a little bit and go into school. And I got there and I loved it. I really thank Nova. I feel like it was a great community to be a part of. They were very supportive. It wasn't that competitive law school feeling when I went there. So I really appreciated it. There was a lot of help and assistance, making you realize what you want to do. And then there were great internship opportunities. So I was able to do an internship at the public defender's office. And I really went there initially because I loved trial work. I was able to do 13 jury trials as an intern. So it was amazing to do that and to be a part of that system and see how it really works.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. So a lot of our students and the people that are viewing may only have an understanding of the public defender's office from the perspective of watching either Suits or Suits.
I just started watching it.
One of my favorite shows, Law and Order, whatever it might be. Like, they all understand. I think that we all pretty much understand that everyone is entitled to an attorney, even if they can't afford one. And that's what the public defender's office is. Sometimes it's called legal aid in some jurisdictions. Can you tell us just a little bit about the public defender's office, what it is, who they serve, and what the process is?
Yeah, so it is called different things in different states, but all states have some sort of free or reduced representation. There is actually a cost to the public defender, but it's not near what it would cost to have an attorney. There's an application fee and then a fee that gets assessed if you're found guilty or plea to your charge. So we represent people who have to be either impoverished or only 20% above the poverty line, which is actually shockingly really low. And we then, we're only representing those people. If we ever see someone who's trying to maybe they don't really qualify, we do have the ability to bring that up before the court, or the clerk's office does those applications. And if someone has more income than they're applying for a public defender, they'll actually be denied if they don't meet the qualifications.
So, okay, so you mentioned that there is some cost, a little bit of a cost. Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, so to apply for a public defender, it's $50. And then if you have a misdemeanor, it's $350 when you're done with your case, and that becomes part of your court cost. And then there's if it's a felony, it's $450. And if it's like a first degree, it's $750. So, but you don't go to jail if you can't pay it. It just becomes part of your costs.
Yeah, and then I guess that's also, we're going to be talking later on about some new laws that just came through, and how that impacts possibly the public defender's office and the actual individuals who might find themselves to be defendants as a result of these new laws. But we were talking before the show a little bit about money and about salary, and I just think that it's just really interesting to me because my father was a civil servant. He worked in Brooklyn. He drove a bus. He was a blue collar guy. And he instilled in me from a very young age that civil service, to be a public servant was the way to go. And so that's what attracted me to become a cop, and I joined the police department in 1983, the NYPD, and served 20 years. And you make a good amount of money after a while, but you're not a millionaire. You're not investment banker or like in private practice as an attorney, making maybe $750 an hour. That's not the way it is. So can you tell us a little bit about this life of service, which is so admirable. And I so much appreciate people like you that are doing this work, for the people. Tell us a little bit about that salary.
So when I started in 96, it was $28,000. It's now 65, but I can tell you, having gone to Nova, the tuition has more than doubled. So, it's not comparable, like the salary increasing with what tuition would be at the very same school. There is some civil servant loan forgiveness, so there's been a few little improvements. If you work in a civil service job, for 10 years, you can get your loans forgiven if they're all federal loans, no private loans. And they do that for most civil service jobs now. And you do, like you said, you do have some increases along the way. So if you are there for a long time, it's not equivalent at all to like what law enforcement can do. But you can make a more decent salary. I think I've been very lucky that I've been able to make it work for a long time and get to do a job I really enjoy. It's not every day that I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. Sometimes the clients are a little difficult or situations are tough, but for the most part, I'm just really fortunate to be able to have done it for so long.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought up loans, because law school, I don't know, how much is law school?
When I went, it was $15,000 a year, and you could get a federal loan for all of that. And so when I left, I didn't have undergraduate loans. Luckily, I was able to work, but it's hard to work during law school. At least it was for me. I did well in school, but it was just very hard for me to do that on top of doing school and working. And so now I believe it's triple that. We have new attorneys, so I don't always ask them like, how much are your loans? Because that's kind of a weird question, but I'll ask them like, how much is tuition now and all of that. So I believe it's tripled since I went. And like I said, the salary is just over double. So
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you'll have this really hefty bill that you have to pay every month, probably like until you're 80. I know mine is going to be going until I'm in my mid 70s. I'm still paying off the PhD. But
yeah, I was lucky. I did pay it off, but it took me the full 20. I did like the 20 repay, but it wasn't, it was like 6 years ago now. So luckily, but it took a long time and I paid back a lot. I think that's a lot of the thing people don't understand. Even when you take out the loan, when you're paying back that loan, you are paying way more than you even took out, because you're paying so much interest, even if you get a decent interest rate. So I think sometimes that's lost in that discussion. Like, even though I paid my loans, I don't have like anything against loan forgiveness or some type of loan understanding that you go in there, you have all these great things you want to do, and then you want to do a civil service job. It's really tough when you come out with that huge monthly bill that you're going to have. And then we see that with a lot of our attorneys, trying to keep them and retain them.
So there's a whole nother piece of this besides the salary that isn't that fantastic. But you must be deriving joy from the work itself, because you're not getting it from the salary. But what about the caseload? What is the caseload like?
When you start at our office, you start in either misdemeanor or juvenile, and you'll have anywhere from 100 to 250 cases. It depends. And that doesn't equal clients necessarily. Some clients can have more than one case. So it's a lot. Like when you start in the morning, usually for Broward County, we're in court every single day in the morning. And then you'll go back to your office and work on depositions and do other things, talk to witnesses, investigate your case and prepare. And then usually 3 days a week in the afternoons, you're on trial, whether that be in juvenile in a bench trial or in misdemeanor in a jury trial. When you go to felony, you have about the same caseload. So you're starting in third-degree felonies, and you're going to have about 200 cases.
Wow.
So it just continues from there. Yeah, it's a lot.
200 cases. So, and they're all active.
They're all active, yeah.
See, and I think that I like chair a few dissertation committees, and I'm a member of some of the committees,
Right.
and then I'm like, I don't remember, who are you again? No, just kidding. But seriously, 200, how can you like keep all those facts inside your head and remember each person and who they are and what their specific needs are?
I think it's a key to have a good strategy because you got to know your strength. I think sometimes, like for me, I'm very good with faces, and then I'll start to remember like your whole story. But I do have to take a lot of notes because we have a case management system, so luckily I don't have to rely on my horrible handwriting. But I take a lot of notes in our system so that I can. It's a computer system, and I can go back, refer to it, refresh my memory. And then when you're talking with one client or dealing with one case, you are focused on that, and that's your responsibility at that time. You're not doing all of them or doing many things on all of them all at once. You really are focused to try to do that deal with that one client and that one issue at that time.
Yeah. I want to bring up something that a lot of our criminal justice students will discover in Intro to CJ, with like the very first entry level class. We talk about the plea bargain and the need for the plea bargain. And it really has a lot to do with court resources, availability of courtrooms. There's only but so many judges, there's only but so many public defenders, there's only but so many prosecutors. And so the plea bargain is sort of like this valve that releases some of the pressure on all of, if we could just imagine, like if every case went to trial, what would that be like? You wouldn't be able to do that, right?
There would be, it's probably, for a serious case, it's probably 2.5 to 3 years to get to trial, from arrest to trial. So I can't imagine if you tried all of them, how that would be.
Yeah.
But the plea bargain, is very good as long as it's used correctly. There are some, ways in the system that you could have used a plea bargain, either forcing someone and like kind of threatening with a lot of jail time over their head. Hey, if you take this plea, you'll just have you just have it on your record and you just do your 30 days in jail. But if that person didn't do that or didn't do exactly what that said, right, it could be like a less serious charge that they had, but the state wants them to plead to that because, this is a better deal for them and they're not looking at prison, right? If that person does get in trouble in the future, that anything you had before, right, can be used against you to enhance a future penalty. So sometimes plea bargains can be abused, but a lot of times our job as a public defender and even as a prosecutor is trying to get the right charge for someone and the right sentence that fits that person and that charge. So I get asked a lot as a criminal defense attorney, how can you defend someone who did something, bad? Like, how can you do that? Those are much easier. Those cases are so much easier to do. I'm doing my job. I'm making sure the system works. I'm making sure law enforcement did their job. I'm making sure the prosecutor does their job. We all have checks and balances for a reason, because anyone going unchecked could really wreak havoc on people's lives. So, we're trying to make sure that that person is charged with the correct charge and it's not overcharged, right? We're trying to make sure the person is not treated as someone who has a huge prior record, or maybe this person has some mental health issues and really needs treatment. So that's really a large part of our job. I really went to be a public defender though for trial work. And so I would love if all the cases went to trial, but they're not all also great for trial, right? Some people do bad things and that's not a great case for trial. But there's a really good reason why, like you said, that the plea bargains are important, because it does make the system work more appropriately when used appropriately.
Back in the day, I have to say back in the day, because this was so many years ago when I was on the job and on patrol and making arrests, and all you heard was, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Even if my eyes watched you do it and I'm arresting you, you're telling me it wasn't you. Okay. So after a while, it's hard to really believe somebody who's saying that they didn't do it, or they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or it wasn't me, it was my friend, and it wasn't my dope, it was, my cousin's dope or whatever. How do you like navigate that? And how do you remain objective? And how do you, like take each case as this unique case, this unique human being and a unique set of facts? Like, how do you do that without getting it tainted by your own perhaps burnout or cynicism?
You definitely get burnout. And you definitely, if someone tells you they don't, like, pat on the back for them, because I just can't imagine. You really have to work with your colleagues a lot because you don't want to have the cynicism, so you're not listening to anyone anymore because you've heard it over and over again. And this person, in fact, didn't do this. That's why you need to do we do our own independent investigation. We have investigators that we can have help us, sit with us, look at different things, give us different ideas. And then we will look at the evidence ourselves to see. And in Florida, we also have the right to depositions, which some states don't. So we can bring in witnesses and question them, ask them maybe a little bit more that's not in their either police report or their statement, to try to really get to what exactly happened. But if you don't, check yourself. If you don't, have someone else's input, and we are very fortunate in Broward County because we have a very collaborative office, where we can walk into someone else's office. Even Gordon Meeks, the elected public defender, walk in there. I did that last week on a client I was very upset about, just kind of picked his brain and just had a sounding board. It's very important. I think in anything in criminal justice you go into, there's a lot of stuff that we don't talk about, law enforcement, any of them, probation, any kind of law enforcement or criminal justice job, is that you have a lot of trauma that you take on. Whether it's something you saw, heard someone else say, or you hear, a lot of times we hear clients' trauma. So it may not even be related to their case, but we're hearing that. So you need a sounding board to make sure that you're not also getting too involved in their trauma. And you're also not just overlooking, they still did this, so it's kind of a balance, right? You want to not burn out from what they're saying to you. Hey, I didn't do it. And then not look into the case, but also keep like a good perspective.
Yeah. So there's this like perfect storm here. You've got like not a great salary, overloaded work, hearing the same thing over and over. So like, how do you take care of yourself? What like self-care is there?
For me personally, I like to do stuff that gives back. So I do work we have a homeless shelter, Broward Outreach, try to go there and do stuff. I spend a lot of time with my family. I'm very fortunate that my family's mostly all local. So I get to see them a lot, and friends. Trying to do more like creative stuff lately. I'm not a very creative person. So I have a friend who's very creative and she's trying to get me involved in doing more classes and stuff. So I think kind of changing it up a little for me helps as well. I read a lot too. I read probably way too much. Nothing like serious, all garbage.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, if you like teaching, you just now said teaching, right?
Oh, go to different classes. I would love to. I would love to teach some stuff, like some things. Like if you're very interested in it, I think you can tell if a teacher is very interested in something. So that would be great. But I don't know if I have like a lot of patience all the time for a lot of different people. So I don't know.
But have you ever taught at the college level, law?
No. At Nova, it's not really teaching you. At Nova Law, they have you, if you're a second or third year student and you booked a class like at the highest grade, you can be a teaching, they don't call it a teaching assistant, I forget what they called it. And so you teach a first year class, like a review for all the students every week. So you meet with the professor, kind of go over subjects that students have historically had issues with or are currently having issues with. So then you do. So I did that for 2 years on my second and third year of school.
Cool. So let me switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the specialization that you're involved with, these specialty courts. And so you've got the drug court, which I want to talk about first. And then after that, I want to go to the mental health court. And like they kind of go together a little bit. And then after that, the questions that are coming after that have to do with the new laws that are coming down.
Okay.
the pipe. So the first question really is about the drug court. Can you explain to us, some of our viewers may not know, probably most do, but just to kind of share with us, what is the process like? How do you get, when you get locked up for whatever, you got crack, they found crack on you, okay, fine, or paraphernalia, or they caught you selling or whatever, do you automatically go to drug court?
No, you have to opt in. There is a process in Broward County. It hasn't been all that successful. It was really more pre-COVID. I think they're starting to do it again, where certain charges, they're just possession of substance charges. you will automatically be set in front of the drug court judge, and then you listen to a speech about drug court. So it's a year of treatment, and that's actually a new law that passed. It can be up to the court as to how long treatment can be. But typically it's a year of treatment. You have to have 90 days consecutive before dismissal. So if you do 90 days and you are clean and in treatment, and a year, your case will be dismissed. There cannot be any suggestion of selling substances to go into drug court. If there's a difference, we have a hearing about it. So if the defense is saying there was a lot of drugs, but it's personal use, this prosecutor can say, well, there was also a good amount of money there, so we think it's selling. There'll be a hearing, and the judge ultimately decides if that person can participate in drug court. We have all different levels of treatment. Some people need residential, some people just need outpatient, and sometimes that switches as they're going through that year of treatment as to what levels they need. The other way we have to go into drug court, which is kind of a little bit newer, is someone getting probation. So they are pleading guilty. The first way ends in a dismissal. The second way is if you have a charge that doesn't even have to be substance use related, but you have a substance use disorder. You get evaluated, and if you don't have too many priors, so I don't want to go into like whole detail about score sheets and how we assess what someone's looking at as far as prison. If you have a prison sentence that you're looking at, you though can opt into drug court if the court finds you're a chronic substance user and you are seeking treatment, and you would get probation in a drug court and be monitored in treatment.
So there's a lot of research out there about the effectiveness of drug courts on recidivism. What we know about addiction is, and I used to go into, I volunteered for many years, about 8 years, into the Broward County Paul Ryan facility, the SAP program, substance abuse program. And I used to go in there, and, you know, the girls in C8, it's this like revolving door, you know. You'd see the same girls over and over and over again, and it didn't really matter to them what the consequences were. It didn't really matter to them what the drugs were doing to their bodies, and the danger, the degradation, what they were placing themselves, you know, putting themselves at risk because of drugs. And it didn't matter whether it was 12-step programs, God, religion, you know, jail. It didn't matter. Like pregnant women who had, you know, however many, this is their 4th or 5th child that probably is going to be given away, and that they're going to, you know, have their parental rights terminated. All of these things, all of these consequences didn't stop them from using. So my question is, knowing what addiction is, knowing the disease of addiction and how powerful it can be, you know, you got to really want to change. You got to want to, and it's a self-honesty thing, right? And it's a kind of like, they call it in recovery, the gift of desperation. What can you speak to about that in terms of who you see, who keeps, you know, they keep coming back, or the success or effectiveness of the drug court?
I mean, I wish there was a solution, because it's so common sense when you're not involved, right? When you're not involved in substance use as a chronic substance user, it's on the outside so common sense that we should say, hey, of course, this is ruining your life. You know, it ruins your physical appearance. You've lost children, you've lost family, you've stolen things, you've lost trust of people. And, you know, I don't know what finally clicks. Sometimes it's definitely they have to just want it. And, you know, you have to hit rock bottom. Some clients will just see that they'll just finally get it. But I wish I could say, like, I know what it is. And I've done, like, gone to trainings, or I've watched people struggle and watch people succeed and watch people fail. And they don't know what it is. But it's very sad, because I've had more than the amount of conversations I'd like to say with clients, begging them to stop, you know, and saying, hey, you're going to go into treatment, please try. Because realistically, what happens when a client who we have in one of our treatment courts, we really get to know them. And we may know their family, and we probably know their whole story and how this all started for them. But one day we'll be in court, and someone will say, hey, did you hear so-and-so died? We all kind of stop court, talk about it for a few minutes, and then we move on because we have, you've seen our dockets, we have like 100 people on the docket. And that's it, and then I'll think about it throughout the day. I'll think about it a couple days later, and I'll just know what a sad light of a person. I'm thinking about one person specifically that we lost, and there's just no way to know like what keeps you on the track. I don't know what it is. I wish that someone could figure it out, comparably with mental health, right? We have people who don't want to take their medicine all the time. I don't know why. They'll get better. I want to have like a video and show them when you're not taking your medicine, how you look, how you act. And then when you are taking your medicine, like show you that so that you're like, no, I need to keep taking it because of that. And I don't know if it's something with brain chemistry, or maybe psychology students could tell us, what really happens. I don't know. But it's just that because you want it to work. And some people it does. We've seen a lot of successes. That's kind of the great thing about treatment court overall. Unlike a regular criminal court, you only see the failures. So you only see people who get rearrested. You only see people who violate probation. You don't see the successes because they're not there. In treatment court, you see people graduate. I mean, sometimes when we have graduation, it's the only thing they've ever accomplished in their life. They did not graduate school. They, don't have any other accomplishments. And this is a graduation. There's a certificate. We do a whole ceremony. And so it's really great. They'll bring their families there. But I don't know what it is for long-term success, because it's just something I think it's tragic. I wish there was more, more that could be done. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because it's, it's like that saying, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. So it's that, but addiction is a mental illness. It's in the DSM, and it is, and a lot of people have co-occurring disorders. So they have, it's not just addiction as one issue, but they have, bipolar, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, trauma. That's why everything today is trauma informed, because it's so much trauma. And we numb it. We numb the trauma through, getting high or taking the edge off, or, whatever it is. So how often do you have the graduations?
Twice a year. I'm just going to remember. But it's graduation's a drug court specific thing. We have people who successfully complete our mental health diversion program or veterans court. Like every court date, there could be someone that's, and so we do recognize them. They do get a certificate. We do congratulate them, but it's not a formal ceremony. We've actually talked about doing that as the numbers grow. There just aren't as many people in those courts as there are in drug court.
Yeah. When do you usually have it? Is there a certain month?
I want to say it's June, but
Can we come?
Yes, it's open to the
I'm
public.
always going to be like pressuring for benefit.
I will say, I wanted to say to the students, like, whatever you're thinking you want to do, I think one thing that is big that wasn't very big when I went to school was intern. I get requests all the time from Nova students. I have 2 undergrad psychology students that are just shadowing me, going to mental health court. They went to Baker Acts this week. So intern, reach out. There are people, there's not a lot of paid internships, unfortunately. I know there's been like push to do that because not everyone can afford to just volunteer. But I encourage you to go shadow, even if it's just a couple days here and there in a field you want to do. I never stepped foot into a courtroom until I interned. So if you're thinking that's what you want to do, go and intern, shadow, any other things, reach out. Most people are going to say, yeah.
Well, that's great that you brought up internships, because now I'm going to ask you live on the air here. Can we get an internship? Can the School of Criminal Justice get an internship opportunity with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Our undergrad, we do them in the summer. So send me your resume.
It's only summer. Is that it?
Yeah. And I always have a couple. I can't have a whole bunch because I'm not always in court all the time. I kind of weird, like other stuff I do. So it's not that interesting, but I have a nice team of people that work with me in mental health. And we have a mental health undergrad psychology student who's going to go watch a trial tomorrow because that's what's going on and she's been watching it. So we definitely have crossover. I think she's going to end up going to law school because she did an internship and she said she doesn't want to be a psychologist anymore. So,
All right.
but
Well,
yeah, definitely reach out.
I will reach out to you and we'll try to see if we can make something work. Summer internships are hard for our undergrads because they don't have financial aid during the
Right.
summer. So
there's always like shadowing opportunities. So even if it isn't a full internship,
right.
to be able to
Okay.
come and coordinate a day or two is always an opportunity.
Okay, that's great. That's what we'll do. So you mentioned mental health court. I mean, I think we all kind of know, like, okay, so you possession charge, you might be eligible to go into the drug court program. Mental health court. What's that?
So our mental health court is very unique. Our misdemeanor mental health court was the first mental health court in the country. It's a very treatment-based court that's run by Judge Lorna Wren, and she takes great care of the clients and works very hard for them to get treatment, but it's very limited. We face, and I'm sure you guys know, but we face a very limited resource community, to find placements for clients that need treatment. There's long waiting lists, there's not enough programs, there's just not enough beds. Mental health court is a lot of different things, and it's unusual because most mental health courts will only focus on like a diversion type of thing where there's a program you go into, you get your case dismissed. We do have that. That's really for nonviolent felonies. Can't have more than 2 prior felonies that also have to be nonviolent, and you do a year of treatment and your charge is dismissed. We also have clients that are incompetent to proceed or that were found not guilty by reason of insanity, and we monitor their treatment there. For the incompetent clients, we try to get them to be stable, doing well enough to then face their charges. And that would mean maybe a plea bargain or a trial. And then for our not guilty by reason of insanity clients, at the time they had their trial, they were found not guilty by reason of insanity, and they have jurisdiction over them forever. So it's not like you see on TV. If you have a very serious charge, you're probably in the hospital for a very, very long time. I have a case from like 1986 where the person's been in the hospital since then. Since like 1989, because he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. So he's entitled to a hearing every year, and we have that hearing every year. And every year he's retained at the hospital. He's very ill. And so, but we monitor all those clients in treatment. They can either go into the hospital and get treatment, or they can be treated in the community.
You mentioned something earlier about medication compliance, and that this has been an ongoing issue across the country for years. My PhD is in social work, and I studied mental health as a specialization area, and I studied a lot about medication compliance, especially with schizophrenic people with schizophrenia. And that some of the medications have like some severe, serious quality of life-ish side effects. And so that's one of the factors for not taking your medication. So here comes a Baker Act situation. Your family has been dealing with this for years, back and forth. You're not taking your medicine, maybe suicide attempts, Baker Acts over and over again. And so finally now you get Baker Acted this last time, and your family has had it. Is that true? Like, do you see that happening? And now once they're released, they have nowhere to go, kind of thing?
It happens, and it's very sad. So often families turn to the criminal justice system after the civil system. The Baker Act system has failed them. There has been a recent change in the Baker Act law. I'm not sure how it's going to affect us yet. When I talked about lack of resources in Broward County, 3 Baker Act facilities have shut down in the last 3 years. So we've lost over 180 beds. So that puts another strain on the system because there's just not enough beds, right? There's always a bed at the jail though. So a lot of times families go and try to get their family member help that's going through a crisis, and they call the Baker Act team. Well, in Broward County, the Baker Act team arrives with law enforcement, or law enforcement is the agency that is called to handle a Baker Act. I'm not a police officer. You were a former police officer. And then you ended up going into social work. Not all law enforcement officers are made for handling a mental health crisis. And there is specific training now. It's called crisis intervention training for law enforcement. But still not everyone's meant for that. you can do a training, but it's not really what you went there for, right? You didn't maybe go to all through the school and do all these things to become a police officer to then go to response to mental health training. But we still have law enforcement officers saying to family members, well, you can get them treatment if you get them arrested. So we're going to take him to jail because you did say that he pushed you. So we'll take him to jail and he'll get treatment. Our Broward County Jail is horrible. It's under a corrective action plan by the federal government. And it has been for over 40 years. And there were this year alone 3 suicides by 3 mentally ill people, and 1 mentally ill person killed another mentally ill person in the jail. So it's really bad. Since I've been a public defender now for 28 years, we have the highest concentration of seriously mentally ill people in the jail. It's over 50% of the jail population. And of acutely mental health clients that are very, very sick. So you have like the half of the population being seriously mentally ill, and then you have a subpopulation of that at 365, give or take, depending on where we are in the month, that are acutely mentally ill, that are really almost in crisis, right? And some of them being in crisis. So that there's just again, in a police law enforcement type setting that wasn't made for being the largest mental health provider in the county and the second largest mental health provider in the state of Florida. So it's just really like a awful situation. But family gets very frustrated because that civil system of Baker Acts has failed them, and their public doesn't want to stay on meds.
I mean, and there's a larger conversation here because our community mental health response isn't that great. So there's like not a lot of help in the community, especially for people who can't afford it or who don't have insurance either. That's a whole nother Megillah, right?
Right. I said a few times, and I think I've like learned this, that you're okay if you're very poor, right? And you're okay if you're very wealthy. It's the in-between that's a problem. So if you're very poor, you could be on disability, you could have Medicaid, and you're going to be okay. If you're in the middle of the road, you don't probably have good enough insurance to stay in long-term care. And if you're only going to have a Baker Act insurance policy for 3 days, that's not usually enough to stabilize someone. But the law feels like it is. So, and then if you're very wealthy, you have a lot more options. So it's sort of like if you're in the middle where the majority of us are, you're just kind of stuck with what you can get your insurance company to pay for. Yeah. So
you also mentioned the Veterans Court. People might be not as familiar with that. Can you talk about that?
We are very fortunate that we have Judge Merrigan, who's actually a general. So I think he's general judge or judge general. I can't remember his title, so I feel awful. He's the judge in our Veterans Court. He takes a very stern but compassionate way, a way of dealing with and speaking to the clients that go there. Again, sort of like drug court, you can go there in pre-trial. So that means if you do treatment, you can get your charge dismissed. It's a very specific, limited number of kinds of charges that can go. So more serious cases aren't going to be able to go there. So it's less serious misdemeanors and felonies that can go there and participate in treatment, get services from, the VA, and your charge will be dismissed. You also, though, could seek to go there instead of going to prison if you can convince a judge that you are a veteran, which isn't that hard to convince them, and that you need treatment and you want treatment. They'll give you an option of doing treatment on probation versus going to prison.
So let's say you have a veteran who is suffering with post-traumatic stress and maybe a co-occurring disorder and also self-medicating with substances. Mental health court, no. Drug court, no. Veterans court, because they're veterans. Is that how it works?
You might fit into all of them. It just may be where you feel more comfortable. Sometimes with treatment overall, what really becomes a success is comfort. So it may be a therapist that you connect with, a doctor that you are comfortable with, a judge that you think is really listening to you. And all 3 judges in those courtrooms are excellent. Judge Merrigan fourth, and now Judge Davis in drug court. They're all very, very good and compassionate. So I think it's, some cases may fit into all those courtrooms, and it just may be a matter of where you're most comfortable. Some charges aren't going to, more likely you won't qualify for drug court because of charges that may qualify for the other 2 courtrooms.
Okay. So I want to give some time, because we're going to be ending at 8. I want to give some time that the chat is blowing up on YouTube, and it's blowing up even here in the webinar. But I want to talk about the 2 new laws, because this is going to impact. One is the bond law, right? And the other
Right.
is homeless law. So can you talk about that a little bit, and how it's going to impact people who really need assistance, not criminalization?
So the one that's really astounding is the criminalization of homeless. That's not what they're calling it. So there's a new law that we haven't seen the final form of it yet, but there will be homeless encampments that can be created in each county to take people who are homeless in a community, and they will have to go to this encampment. It's not a residential place, it's just an area. That area will have to have access to medical and mental health facilities for the homeless, but you can, a police agency can then take someone and bring them there. There's a lot of vagueness in the law. What if the person doesn't want to go there? Then are they going to be arrested? What is going to be the charge? I guess trespassing because you told them to leave. It's not currently a crime to be homeless and be in an area that's available to the public. Obviously, it's a nuisance and it's worrisome. I can tell you we do not have beds at homeless shelters. It's not as if you can just go. There is a homeless task force and you have to call a number. So that is a first problem, right? Having a phone to call a number. Or you have to show up at these different locations, and they're in different places each day of the week. So on Monday, they're at one place and Tuesday they're at another. So there isn't the resources right now. I wish that had been put towards resources for more homeless shelter beds, more long-term, housing. I know a lot of our young attorneys are having trouble finding affordable housing. So if you have someone who's on Social Security disability, maybe they have a mental illness, they get $760 a month. That is what they get. So, to try to find somewhere to live for that amount of money is very difficult. So I think that those laws are so misguided and could have been used to give more resources back to our community to help people who are not able to afford some more affordable housing, more treatment. Like I said, we lost 180 Baker beds. So any of those things would have been better than we're going to make a homeless encampment and we're going to arrest people for being homeless.
And I think there's a part of the law that allows for businesses and community members even to sue the county, sue the local government for failing to take action. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And I'm not sure, again, like how the final language is going to come out. It does say that you can, so if you're a business owner or a homeowner and there is a person who is homeless and the county or the city has not done enough, you know what that's going to mean, has done enough to rid of the homeless, you can sue. So counties, I think, are going to have a motivation to do something because they aren't going to want to be having lawsuits all the time, because there was a homeless person.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening to this. I really, I can't even believe that we're in 2024 and we're having this conversation right now. Like that this is what this has come to. I don't understand. I don't. Tell us.
I'm at a loss. I just think like we're moving forward and then I'm like, what is this? Like I got it. I never thought it would pass. And then I heard, oh no, it's like going through very quickly. And there was a lot of motivation to pass it. So
yeah. And it didn't have a lot of pushback.
I don't think it had any pushback. I think there's only 1 or 2 people who said a little bit, but I don't believe it had
and
any.
then there's that. Then there's the fact that there's not a lot of pushback. How come? Okay, so let's go on to the other great law about the bond. Tell us how that's going to impact.
So in a lot of counties in the state of Florida came up with a standard bond system. So if you were arrested, for instance, for grand theft, you could bond out without having to see that TV court judge. that you may see on TV when someone gets arrested for something more serious. You'll see them with the judge that's like on television. And so if they got a grand theft, they would have like $1,000 bond. They would post that bond and they would be out until their charge is filed or not filed, and then until their trial. And as long as they showed up to court, they would be able to stay out. The legislature and the governor passed a bill that said that many charges, first of all, could not have that at all. They all had to see the judge. So that's sort of like how the plea bargain kind of helped the system. The bond system really helped because then everyone didn't have to see that judge. Also, there are many charges now that the state can file within 5 days in motion to keep them in jail the whole time pending their case. And if they file that motion within the 5 days, which actually says they shall, so they don't even have the discretion not to. If they file the motion, the judge has to have a hearing within 5 days, and they can hold them no bond until their case is either plea bargained or goes to trial. And that's before they're filed. So the police arrest you for whatever, and you're held for up to 33 days before the case is filed.
So how's that going to impact? How's
Well,
that going to
first
impact?
of all, we have a presumption of innocence. It's in the Constitution. So that's just, I don't know.
Have that? Oh, wait a second. We still have that?
Right. So that's kind of gone. And what's going to happen is the jails are just going to become more and more overcrowded. And for an average person to stay in the jail, it's $273 a day. That's not someone who's medically fragile or someone who's mentally ill, or someone who's going through withdrawal or anything like that. That's a lot more. But so you will have many more people staying in the jail, and you'll have more state attorneys and public defenders having to argue those motions in addition to all the other cases that they already have. Because it's a shall, so they have to file it.
$273 a night.
Yeah.
That like a 3-star, 3.5.
Well, there are Google reviews, interestingly enough, for the jails, and they're mostly 1-star.
Stop it.
Really? Yeah, I had to send my intern address one time, and I didn't know, and I was like, "Wow, there's like Google reviews for North Broward Jail." I don't remember what Paul Ryan's were, but yeah, there's Google reviews.
Wow. Well, we took a tour, in addition to the tour that we did for the courts, we took a tour to the main jail, and we visited the fragile unit and some of the other places, and intense. I mean, I'm from New York, so Rikers Island is, the Tombs and Rikers Island. Those were the two names over there.
But you would hope in 20 years we would do better, right?
I would hope that for a lot of things, but that's not what we're seeing. It's very much like a Twilight Zone episode. But so I think we've come to the time now where we're going to start to field some questions. And in the interest of time, we have 7 minutes left. We're going to take 3 from the YouTube chat and 3 from the webinar chat. And I know that we have a couple of Q&A right now. We have 2. We have Gord and Wilfell. Oh no, my bad. And then we have a hand raised that I think, who's going to take that? Layla or Justin are going to take the webinar people.
I can take the webinar people.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So I'll ask Gord's question. So Gord asks, when you are given a file, are you suggesting that this is a process in which you would obtain partial payments for those who do not qualify outright, as in they are not completely eligible to be given 100% forgiveness for the amount owing, but will be required to pay some percentage?
I think you mean for people who are appointed? Not 100% what you mean. But if it's someone who they have to meet the criteria of being only up 20% above the poverty level. If they don't get a public defender. They have to try to hire a private attorney. Does that make? I think that's what they're asking. Sorry.
I think so too. I think the same. I think it's Wilfell. Asks, as a dependency case manager by day, a lot of my parents get referred to drug court, but parents are being told by their peers that accepting drug court is the easiest way to get custody of their child. Are judges aware of this notion? Can anything be done to change that narrative to encourage compliance and rehabilitation versus obtaining permanency?
I mean, I think drug court would be a good option because they are required to do treatment. So I guess you're thinking that it's like a manipulation to go because it's maybe easier to get custody of their child back. But I mean, they are required to do treatment. I know in Broward, Judge Bristol does dependency drug court. She's a tough judge. So if they're going to complete it in order to get their children back, that would probably be a good option. But if it's a manipulation, it does happen. People talk in the jail. There was one time a pamphlet going around about being incompetent and faking incompetency, and it got around to everyone and eventually got back to one of us, and we were like, what in the world? It was so bad. So there is some manipulation. You can always tell a judge, but I would be careful that you're making sure that it's a person that you're talking about that's, manipulating before you say it.
Perfect. Those are all the questions from the chat and the webinar.
Oh, wait a second. There's a new one that just popped in. So in all fairness, I want to give like 3 and 3, but it's Kino.
Okay. Kino asks, since the passing of this new law, are you anticipating an increase in homeless court?
We didn't talk about community court, and it's amazing. We have 3, one in Fort Lauderdale, one in Pompano, and one in Hollywood. They're under referred, but very utilized. So these are different courts that are done in the community. You can have a charge, but you don't need a charge to access the services. They provide meals. It's a really neat community involvement because the homeowners associations of these communities takes turns providing different meals. They have a bus that comes and does showers, laundry. The medical bus from Broward Health comes. They have case managers there. It's really amazing. So people can just walk up. It's becoming a very big word of mouth. I do expect that that'll be used more, but I don't know what's going to happen if those are shown to interfere at all with the community. They will be gone, because under that law, if you're interfering with the community and someone complains, you cannot have homeless people there. So it may end up that it's not successful, but I do think that there's a lot of community buy-in. So hopefully it doesn't happen.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you. And before Layla goes off camera and Justin comes on, I just want to let everybody know that we're live streaming from the Fishler College of Education School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel, but we are actually physically in Chicago right now. We're in Chicago, and I'm in one hotel room in the same hotel with Layla and Justin. They're in another room. And we're doing the show from the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences Conference, where Layla and Justin have been student leaders running roundtables for Alpha Phi Sigma. They've been scholarshiped here by the Broward County Chiefs Association. We're very grateful to for that partnership, and that was actually through the generosity and tenacity of Chief Gary Blocker from the Wilton Manors Police Department, who also was inducted as a lifetime honorary member of Alpha Phi Sigma on Saturday. So I want to just plug that, plug away. And Justin, are you ready?
Yes, Dr. T, I'm ready.
Okay, cool. So as soon as you get on, we're gonna answer 2 questions from just two questions from the chat. I know that's a difficult decision you have to make, but that's why you get paid the big bucks.
So there's a lot of questions in the YouTube chat, but
I know.
one that did stand out to me was from Jillian Snyder, and it was, as trauma-informed approaches have become increasingly popular in the criminal justice space, do public defenders undergo any type of training to understand this better?
No, there's not a lot of training for lawyers in regards to any kind of mental health training at all. Really, most of what I've gotten has been from on the job. And there's really no classes that involve mental health and the law. I think there's one at St. Thomas, at St. Thomas Law School, and I speak at that once a semester. So there's just not a lot. And I know with childhood trauma, the ACEs, like that's all like really in criminal justice. I think as students, you guys are learning about it a lot. And I feel like we are kind of behind a lot. So it's definitely something that in the legal system, we need to be more educated about. But right now, there's just not a lot of it.
Okay,
Right, and
we got time for one more. Look at this, right under the wire. It's almost 8 o'clock. And I'm sorry, Lillian, I know you had your hand up, and I apologize. And same thing for Will, although Will is just saying congratulations, Justin and Layla, keep up the great job. So Lillian, you raised your hand earlier, and if I have time, I'll squeeze you in. Go ahead, Justin.
All right, so the last question for the YouTube was from Elizabeth King, and they said, how do you approach advocacy and defense strategies differently when representing clients with mental health issues or with substance abuse?
It's a really good question. So it's really interesting. When you have someone who has a mental health diagnosis and they are really not doing well, our job is still to do what's in their expressed interest. That is really hard. So we may know that they do not want to go to the hospital, but they need to go. We actually have to have a hearing and fight against them going to a hospital because we represent their expressed interest. And that's one of the requirements for us ethically. But it's very tough because, when you try to counsel them and talk to them and advocate, hey, with them, like this is going to be the best thing and this is really what you need. But they don't see it and that's not what they want. So you have to do what's in their expressed interest and you have to advocate for what they want. And I will say it creates a very good attorney-client relationship because it's sometimes the first person who's ever spoken up for them. So some of my clients who I've had for many, many years, including the one I've had since I started in the office, basically, we have a very good, even though he's very sick, we have a very good relationship. We're able to communicate pretty well and he does think I'm on his side. So that's really helpful. But it's hard because sometimes you're not arguing for maybe the right thing, but what the person wants.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He's a senior, by the way, going to be graduating. We're going to miss him. Lillian, I'm going to give you a very quick question. It's got to be quick. Go. You just got talking privileges, so.
Okay, so can you hear me, Professor?
Yes.
Okay, the question is for the public defender, Miss, I'll call you Blostein. Okay, thank you.
Go for it.
When you're talking, when the state is talking about a deferred prosecution agreement, and in a particular case, it does not fit the facts. The state seems not to have a reliable case, one that they could win. So what they do is they will offer this DPA and suggest a mental health evaluation for the person that's being charged, when in fact no assessment was done to say that that particular person has a mental health disorder. And it seems to me that that is out of order. The assessment would come first, as opposed to the evaluation. What they're saying is if you agree to the evaluation, all charges will be dropped in a matter of weeks or something like that. But to agree to that, to concede to that kind of agreement, was saying that the person is saying they got mental health disorders when nothing has been assessed. What is your take on that?
All right, that's a good question. Long question, but it's a good one. Go ahead, Melinda.
So it's really tough because it's sort of like diversion, right? And I basically have to let my client again be the guide. So I'm going to counsel them, hey, I think you have a good case, but if you go to trial, there's a risk, right? We don't know what they're going to say. We don't know what the jurors are going to say. You don't really know how facts are going to come out. You could be prepared. Things do change in trial. When you have a deferred prosecution agreement or diversion, or an opportunity to get an assessment, if that assessment says the person doesn't have a mental illness, then that's in their control, right? Doing the assessment, getting that done, that's something in the client's control. So sometimes that's a really good option for them because there's not a lot of risk. Is there a stigma behind it? Well, we should try to get rid of the stigma as much as we can. I know it still exists, but I would, I just let them make the decision either way. And I can see exactly what you're saying because sometimes they do offer diversion and when they have a weak case. But I maybe get on an actual term, I might get the evaluation done privately and let's see what it says, and then turn it over. But I would let my client make the decision. It's tough.
Yeah, great. Melinda, thank you so much for being
You're welcome.
Tonight. It's been awesome. I'm going to email you and try to see if we could maybe get some shadowing experiences that are, convenient for you, and maybe even before June happens, because our students graduate May 1st.
Right.
and school ends, this semester ends. So it would be just great if maybe there was somebody who was interested could do it, right before they get out. So let's see, we'll talk. I'll
Okay.
all right, but thank you again so
No
much for
problem.
being here. Next
That's
week,
great.
we have your boss will be here. I don't know, that's he's not really your boss. You just work with
He's
him.
so awesome. Yeah, he's great. He's like the most patience ever. Like he's just a nice.
Yeah. He's
so.
like a saint. I can't wait
Yes.
to have him on next week. Thank you to all of the students who joined us tonight. Please
Thank you
make
for
sure that you
having me.
email me immediately to let me know that you were here tonight, that you participated, that you attended, even if you didn't get a chance to actually verbalize your question. If you put it in the chat, that's good enough for me. And want to always thank our dean, Dr. Durham, our other dean, Dr. Kushner, and Dr. Castro, for all of their support, everything that they do for us. And we hope that you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. So everybody, good night, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.